Welcome to the Fourth Row Podcast, your source for 2A sports. And now, your hosts, coming to you from the Slim Force Studio, Andy and Benny Hill.
Welcome to the Fourth Row Podcast, the only podcast dedicated solely to 2A sports here in the fantastically hot and rainy state of Utah. There was a rainstorm this afternoon, apparently when I was sleeping, that my wife told me about. It
did. It rained very hard.
So welcome here. It's a Saturday afternoon. This is not our normal time when we do the podcast. Usually we're doing them on Sunday night, but we have a very special guest with us here tonight. Former head coach of the Orem Tigers and one of 6 people to three-peat as football state champions in the state of Utah, Jeremy Hill. Welcome to the show.
No, appreciate you having me on, and I'm glad you pulled that stat out. I didn't know that fact. So
yes.
From the time we started podcasting, we've always thought, we always go through a list of the people we know, and we think who would be interesting we could come on that our viewers would like to listen to, and we would like to listen to, because quite frankly, we love to talk to people and get to hear their story, and your name's always been one of the ones we wanted to talk to. And finally, up until this year, this is the first year we've covered football.
Yeah.
And so we thought this year, absolutely, Jeremy's going to come on the podcast. So,
no, I'm excited to be here.
And you came down to Gunnison, you're in studio, which is fantastic. We've been doing a lot of our podcasts recently over online. And we've done some in Kanab and San Juan and Beaver, and audio's not always that good, especially when they're in a school, in a locker room, or who knows where they're, a coach's office. So to have you in the studio is fantastic.
Yeah. So welcome. Thanks for coming down.
No, I appreciate it. Always good to get back to Gunnison.
Yeah. So just in case everybody, if they don't know, our listeners don't know, Jeremy is 100% Sanpete blood in him. His mom grew up in Mayfield. His dad grew up here in Gunnison. We're first cousins. So he's got some Sanpete County blood in him.
Definite redneck blood.
Yeah.
His dad, Gerald, was a basketball legend at Gunnison High School.
Out at Gunnison High School.
One of the hills. So
ran track as well and played baseball. And we were talking just before we went on air. Sounds like he was good, but we can't verify that.
Can't verify it. So whatever he says, got to go.
Yeah. Love it. Well, kick us off, Benny.
I think it's obviously we're going to talk about football. You grew up in Orem, Utah, in the shadows of BYU, and I would imagine you were a big BYU fan.
Yeah, definitely was a big BYU fan. It helped. My dad, one of his patients, he was a dentist, obviously, and one of his patients was over the tickets. So we had, season tickets to football, basketball, baseball. This is back when basketball had the little pit right there, so you could see it, right there, front row, right in front of the cheerleaders. And so, huge BYU fan. We watched it all. We attended it all. We actually took a little road trip out to the 84 National Championship game.
Wow.
I got to be there live for that
awesome.
one. We were there live when they knocked off Miami, which was another big one. So definitely grew up, right there in the heart of Utah County next to BYU, about 10-minute drive. So, yep.
Nice. So you actually grew up in Orem, go to school at Orem, end up at Orem High School. Talk about your athletic career at Orem High School.
Yeah, so Orem High was a 2-year starter. This is back when they didn't really play a lot of freshman, sophomore. Got a lot of time as a sophomore, started a couple of games, but had 2 really good years there. Junior year, we played for the state championship. We were an undefeated team, lost 7-3 to Skyline, who was kind of the powerhouse back then, and a great game. We had a tip ball that was an interception that went off our safety's hands, ended up in the receiver's hands, and that's how they got their 1 touchdown. We came back in that game, and I hadn't watched this game until about 2 years ago because it still stunk so bad. Our quarterback rolled out, and our tight end, dragged across the field, and we hit the game-winning touchdown. The back judge, not the side judge, called him over the line of scrimmage. And it's still to this day. We got an apology letter the next week, and you can see on the film he wasn't over the line. Obviously, you can tell I'm still talking about it. Pretty bitter that one of my rings I should have had there was taken away. But we came back that next year, my senior year, and we got Skyline in the semis, throttled them 28-7, went on to win the state championship, and was a team captain of that team, all region, all state, was an athlon and a Street Smiths All-American that year, and had a really good year. I stopped playing basketball, baseball my sophomore year, just focused on football after a broken hip, and then decided football was my path, and got a lot of offers. I was actually, you bring up BYU. I kind of played the cat and mouse game with BYU, right? They offered early, but I felt like that's back when Nebraska, Colorado, Washington were the big schools, and that's where I thought I belonged. I just felt like, especially with Nebraska running a very similar offense to the veer we ran at Orem High. I loved, just run blocking and putting people on their back. And so I thought that was kind of what I wanted to do. And then I wasn't sure if I was going on the mission, be an LDS growing up. So it was, hey, we're not going to take you if that's going to happen. So we kind of, did a little cat and mouse dance with BYU. I didn't attend all their junior days back then. I didn't attend their Saturday stuff they would do, their little breakfast before the game. And decided kind of last minute I went, and it was a total illegal meeting. But I had Roger French come to high school, talk to me, went down and met privately with Lavelle, and decided, hey, I wanted to be close to home. They were going to honor whether I went on a mission or not. And so I committed to BYU straight to Lavelle. And so we were good. Thought I was it. I told everybody else, hey, I'm good. I'm signing. Night before the signing deadline, I get a call. Hey, we've kind of messed up on scholarship. And this is what they're notorious for back then. That we kind of messed up on scholarships. We overpromised. We know your dad's a dentist. We know you can afford tuition for a semester. We want you to come walk on. And of course, back then, being the All-American, being all that stuff, it hurt my pride bad. I'm like, I'm not going to go walk on, and so I kind of placed a call to Utah. I placed a call to Hawaii. I placed a call to Arizona. That's who was still kind of, flirting with me right there at the end. And then I had a couple good buddies, really good. Two of my best friends, and another teammate were going to Rick's. And Robert and I was the O-line coach, and he's like, hey, come here for 1 year, and I'll get you to wherever you want to go. I'm like, great, let's do it. Plus, my good friends were going there, so I kind of took that path of, instead of D1 at first, which was fine. I got to go up. I got to play. I was a freshman All-American up there, and had 2 really good years up there, and then decided, came out of there with a lot of offers, but we had our first baby on the way. And so I kind of looked at, I want to be close to home. BYU spurred me once. So I took my official visit down there and told Lavelle, oddly enough, Jay Hill did the same thing at the time. We're here to waste your money. Just because I was still so upset for what happened 3 years ago, previous to that. And, I kind of looked at Utah, but again, growing up a BYU fan, we're taught to hate Utah, hate the red. And so I didn't go to Utah, and that kind of left Utah State. Dad went there. It was close to home. And John L. Smith, who was a coach there, back-to-back bowl wins, doing some good stuff. I thought this is the place to be. 2 days after I signed with them, that's when John L. left. I think it was Louisville back then. Here comes the Arslanian brothers in that just ruined that program. We won 1 game my 2 years there, and end up I didn't even play my senior year. I tore my MCL a second time and decided it was done. I had a newborn baby and just was done playing at that point. Went on to play 3 or 4 years after that for the Blaze, Utah Valley Blaze. And then when I was 33, that's when the Blaze kind of shut down. The Utah Valley Thunder came up, right? That's the year the AFL was on strike. I went and played another year with them. So that's kind of the extent of the playing career.
Wow, impressive. So what size were you coming out of high school?
Out of high school, I was 6'4", 315.
315?
315.
Wow, yeah, big boy.
Heavy hitter.
Heavy hitter.
So just in case our listeners don't know, a lot of people may not know what Rick's is. So it's BYU Idaho now. Yeah. And I'm curious, I don't know this. When did they shut their program down?
It was so I was there the fall of 95, the fall of 97, and I believe it was right around 99, 2000 was there last year. So I was one of, I think, there was probably 3 or 4 teams to go through there after me, but it was pretty short thereafter they decided to shut it down.
No, as a side note, my daughter, they were up there, and they went up there. She was doing massage therapy school up in Rexburg, and we went up this last year. I don't know if I've ever spent any time in Rexburg, but you go down there on the campus, BYUI, and it is a beautiful place. Where that stadium is down there, I'm like, this is awesome. I'd love to see a football game here, and I thought, it's too bad they don't have it because it was a really great program.
It was a phenomenal program. Several guys I played with went to play on the league. It was, we always had the who's who of college football back then come in to recruit our players. And so we had, but when I left there, I had the Colorado, the Washington, the Nebraska, Florida State. I had all the offers that I wanted, right? And that's just who was coming through there. They came recruited very well. Lots of my guys I played with went on to play a long time in the NFL. And it's crazy. We went up there. We actually had to go get a COVID test. That's the only place we get a COVID test for into Hawaii. Made the 4-hour drive up. And I walked.
Sounds fun.
Oh, yeah. It was super fun. But I got there, and just like you, I looked at the stadium. When I played there, beautiful stadium, but it was all grass, and now it's all turf and beautiful field, and they do it for intramural football.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is such a waste of a good place.
Are you a BYU fan or a Utah State fan now?
That's a great question. It's a little bit, honestly, I'm a who I coach fan. So right now we got Cooper Legas, Utah State. I'm a huge Utah State, huge Cooper Legas fan. And then at BYU, my son was just there. Obviously Kingsley, Puka, we got Jacob Robinson, we've got Josh Singh, we've got Ethan Slade, one of my favorite players ever. So we've got 7 or 8 guys there. And so we watch both games every week. We'll go to a few games, and it's more to me now. It's about who I coached, where they're at, what games we're watching. When Noah's up at Oregon, obviously watching all those games. Yeah. And so, I'm more of a who I coached fan than a BYU fan.
So you were all in on football growing up, all in high school, all in college. Did you know you're going to get into coaching?
That's a great question. I didn't. My son, Hunter, when he was in 3rd grade, was begging me to play tackle football. And I was kind of more of a believer of let's get a little older. Let's wait till 7th grade, kind of that school of thought. But he was begging me. And he had a couple cousins that were older playing out in American Fork. So I'm like, all right, you're begging me. Let's go do it. I'm going to put you on, as a 3rd grader, I'm going to put you on the 4th, 5th grade team. My hope was he'd get his bell rung that first practice. And be like, Dad, I'm done.
Cut it.
Dad, I'm done.
That's funny.
Unfortunately, I got there and the kid loved it, right? He loved it. He wanted to play. And I went to that first practice and I sat on the sideline. And I thought, I want to be that selfish parent. Hunter, obviously, he's a giant, right? Yep. He got broad shoulders. He's got a huge wingspan. He's built to play left tackle. But I was kind of hoping he might get some of those hill genetics we were talking about earlier, right, to jump, run. And he's got some feet issues when he was younger. He's got those Native American hips, which are a little tighter. And so I knew he was going to be an O-lineman, right? And so first, I just wanted to be kind of that selfish dad that was going to do, and there's nothing wrong with being this dad, but I wanted to just coach up the crap out of my son. Because I knew he was going to be a product of his technique. And so I wanted to spend that time there. But I went to about 10 minutes of his first practice, and I watched the joke going on, and I'm like, I can't handle it. So I walked over, and I left that first practice of the head coach going, hey, coach my offensive line and run my defense. And so I did that first year, and I thought, hey, if I'm going to be doing this, I may as well be the head guy. And really it came down to not wanting to control my son's playing like everyone thinks, not wanting to control those things. It was I want to give my son and these other kids the good experiences I had. I also, what I did want to control, how many hits are they taking? People look at us, and we did a lot of good stuff on the national stage at high school. We never had a practice where we took kids down the field. We never lined up and run wind sprints. We ran the practice like it was on the professional or high-end college level. We had set periods, set times. We never took kids down to the ground. That's where kids get hurt, right? We obviously taught them how to tackle properly, did tackling drills, but we wanted to have kids be healthy, right? And so that's really when I started coaching was I want to make sure these kids have a great experience. I want them to play on into high school, and I want them to limit the head hits, right? And so that's really why I got involved was those things. And I was watching that first practice. They did that drill where the kids line up and they run around the outside, then come meet in the tunnel, banging heads. And I'm like, what is going on here? We're not doing this. I walked over and told the coach, we're not doing this. Let me teach you some stuff. And then, the rest is kind of history. And then I just kept going and, thought my son's going to be going to Orem High. That's where we live. That's where I attended. And so I got on at the high school level because I wanted to start. It took a lot of work. Orem High was such a good place in the 80s and 90s. And then you had some coaches come in. They had a 2-year span where one of the counselors was the head coach, like talking back those warm bodies, right? And so I'm going, no, we need to get this. So it's actually a school that's going to be running good, going well. So when my son comes through, we did what we did. A lot of state championships, college, opportunities. But it took that, I was there for 10 years. People look at the 3 championships and really, my fingerprints on the 4th. My name's not on the 4th. My fingerprints are on it. You don't get 4 without the 3, right? And I don't want to take anything away from Gabe's school, who did a great job. But you don't get those 3 or 4 without the previous 6 years I did as the assistant, my first year as a head coach. And a lot of that legwork that goes into that, it wasn't turned on overnight.
Right. So a lot of these names that we're talking about, you start coaching them at an early age, right? Your son Hunter, who's built almost just like you.
He's bigger than me.
He's got some big genes, right?
Yeah.
You're talking to guys like Cooper Legas and Puka Nakua and a lot of these names we're talking about. At what point during that journey during youth football did you realize, hey, these kids are special?
Yeah, it's interesting. People always ask me that, and you could tell Cooper was different. Ethan Slade, you brought up earlier, he's a kid I coached at basketball. So I'm a big believer in the old school of, hey, let's put the football down, let's go play basketball. Let's put that basketball down, let's go play baseball. So we had a really core group of kids that played all three. Ethan Slade was not a football player. Ethan Slade lost his mind in a basketball game. We lost in the championship game, and he came over and started throwing chairs everywhere. And
Bobby Knight style.
It was Bobby Knight style. And we happened to, with the kind of the rest of the kids, be playing at the Utah Indoor League, which ran at the same time. So we were kind of doing those perpendicular or parallel to each other. And I'm like, hey, buddy, you have a lot of anger issues. You want to play some football tomorrow? You can hit kids. He's like, I can hit kids. I'm like, you can hit kids. And he had no training, no anything. So we let him come up, and I threw him in on the offensive line. This skinny little kid, but he was out there just throwing punches. And I'm like, no, not close fists. Teach him how to, do those things. And the kid fell in love with it, So it's kind of interesting to see how a lot of these evolved. But you could tell Cooper was special, right? Mm-hmm. You could tell. And I didn't get Noah till his junior year when they moved up here. Puka, I got day one. They left Las Vegas after his father passed away. And it was 10 minutes of the first practice. And I was telling the couple assistant coaches I had, this kid's going to play on Sundays. You knew right away this kid was going to play there, and then we kind of hit, so that 6th grade year, 5th grade year, we were doing some really great things. And then we had a couple more kids that, moved in 7th grade, 8th grade. Buju Tuasavora was one who we had that moved in. And again, he's playing, collegiately right now. So that 8th grade, 9th grade year, we just ran through teams, really 7th, 8th, and 9th. And so I knew that core group of kids was going to do some great things in high school. And it's funny because I always heard, well, you recruited kids, you did these different things. These kids played for me for 6-7 years.
Funny story. I was thinking last night, and you'll remember all this stuff. We followed Orem High School from a distance way back when they were 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old. So I went back to look at my old files because we printed a lot of stuff for you. Jeremy would call me and say, hey, we need some, you had jerseys all the time, shirts, hoodies for his kids. So I went down and found a list of kids here that we had printed shirts for with names on the back. This is the oldest back I could find. But you look at these names here you just read off: Hill, Laga, Pedersen, Nakua, Robinson, Slade. So now I knew these kids when they were 10 years old because we just saw these shirts coming through year after year. And then pretty soon I hear Jeremy's coming through. They're taking 7-on-7. They're going to Mesquite. So he stops through Gunnison, picks up some swag, goes to Mesquite. The next thing you know, you're going down to Bishop Gorman in high school, stopping by, getting some swag, going down to Bishop Gorman. Same kids.
Yep.
So
it's been the same group of kids, you've got on here, the Gilman kid, we only had him for 1 year. He's playing with Stanford now, older brothers with the Chargers. But most of these kids, you're spot on. And it was really, these are my same, you did the basketball jerseys. You did my baseball jerseys.
Basketball and baseball, same kids.
It's the same kids. And so I always laugh when people say you recruited. Yeah, we had Noah come up. That was phenomenal, but Kingsley was in our system from 7th grade on. But this core group of kids, it was my son's age. You're right. We did everything together. The Mesquite 7-on-7s. We did, we took that FBU team I was a head coach of, which, if you don't know, the FBU is basically March Madness for football. 8th graders, 7th graders, 6th graders. They do it at 3 age levels. And I was a head coach of the 8th grade team. And we went, out of 64 teams, we were 42nd was our seed. Utah had never been past the second round. We made it all the way to the championship game out in Naples, Florida. But my core group of kids were my Orem Tiger kids. They knew the offense, they knew the defense, and then we obviously had, Apuika, who's playing for the Browns right now. We had a lot of good kids also that complement us because it was an all-star team from the state of Utah. But my core was these same Orem Tiger kids, and so it's always interesting when I hear about the recruiting, the different stuff. I'm like, I've had these kids, and you just right here's the list. Their jerseys have been printed since I started coaching these kids in 3rd and 4th grade for the majority. So it's always interesting when I hear that stuff.
So let's talk a little bit about the transition. So you're coaching these kids up. You realize, hey, I got a special group of kids. These kids start to hit high school. You were an assistant at that point?
Yeah. So we were actually up until, let's see, the boys' 8th grade year. So right after the 8th grade season ended, I was actually, a lot of people don't know this, I was fired as a coach at Orem, as an assistant. They basically cleaned house with everybody, wanted everybody to, reapply. And this was the vice principal getting into, the head coach wasn't his idea, but they basically cleaned house and they wanted to get rid of one or two coaches, which they should have just fired the one or two, but they did the whole, we're going to make everybody reapply type thing, So I had this group of kids, and going into ninth grade, as the FBU, which was November, December, was going on, I didn't know where we were going to take these kids to high school. I didn't know if I had a job somewhere to coach, but we'd always, preached Orem High, and they had, like Ben said, all the Orem High swag in the world. Mm-hmm. And so I decided that year, and they came back and offered me a running back job, which whatever, got me on staff,
Coaching running backs.
Yeah, coaching running backs. But I sent Nakua up to he was varsity ready. We had 3 other kids that we sent up that they were varsity ready. And I'm not a big believer in sending the freshmen up to varsity, because a 14, 15-year-old is never what the 18, 19-year-old is. They're just not. In some rare cases, they are. Puka going to hold his own, no problem. Cooper Legal went up as well. But the rest of the kids, we kept them down as freshmen. And that really was, I wasn't sure what the future of Orem was, what was going to happen, but I wanted this core group of kids to stay together. That offseason, I had every coach from Pleasant Grove to Timpview to everyone going, hey, come over. You can be what you want here. Just bring your kids, because they knew what it was.
Right.
And Timpview, Whittingham, who was the coach back then, said, you can be the DCOC and just bring your kids and bring Todd's money. That was the thing. That was his wish list. It was the funniest interview ever. I'm like, whatever. But and then, obviously after that year, the job opened up and I got that job. But again, I wasn't the first choice. So they actually offered it to Mark Wooten, who was up in Logan. I forget which high school he was at up in Logan. But he accepted it. And then he later decided not to take it. Well, they also, number 2 was Lou Wong, who had, left Timpview, went to Mountain View for a year. And so then they went back after they didn't get Wooten. And basically they had Chad Lewis, who's Orem High fame, right? Played in the NFL, played at Orem High, make a person called Lou Wong. Hey, we need you over here. And Lou basically said, no, piss off. You guys give to Wooten over me. His pride was hurt because he was the great Lou Wong. And so he decided, no, I'm going to Westlake. So they called me during Christmas break, almost begging, hey, we don't have anybody else. Will you take it? And I'm like, I was the right guy all along. These are my kids. Yes, I'll take it. So that's how I got that job. And then we obviously brought the kids up and had some struggles that first year. We had a 5-7 year. I think our biggest, we went 3-2 in region, made the playoffs. Our biggest probably claim to fame that first year, aside from making obvious improvements, we beat Zach Wilson twice.
Oh, nice.
We beat him up at corner for my first ever win was a come from behind at corner cannon against Zach Wilson. And then our first other playoffs and we knocked him out of the playoffs. That was kind of our first, real win, but it got us a lot of good momentum, learned a lot of lessons, and I changed up my staff going, into that year or two, and the rest was history. So
what coaching mentors do you have?
I think, and you guys both played, you remember really the really good coaches and you remember the really terrible coaches. Like the ones in between, you just kind of whatever. But I had, in high school, I really looked up to Robert Steele, which was kind of funny because I came back and when I was assistant my first year, he was the head coach. And then the next couple of years he was the DC. So I got to kind of coach with him, and he's just that old school mentality. He's got some farmer blood in him too, that just, this is how we do stuff. We don't mess around. So I really liked his style of just, you don't lie to kids. You just tell them what it is. You tell the parents what it is. He's very transparent. And sometimes it's hard to hear for kids. But I think ultimately they respect you. The parents respect you. They know exactly where they are. Mm-hmm. And so he was a really big one for me. Matt Logan, my offensive line coach, he did a really good job. He wasn't an O-line guy, but he did a really good job of learning the veer, learning the plays, and he really helped me there. And then, probably lastly, as much as I disliked the guy, Robert and I, he just was the meanest SOB ever, but he found a way to get the most out of you. And at the time you thought he just was this giant a-hole that you hated. But then you realize later on he actually really did care about you and was trying to push you to do stuff. So those are the guys that I really, could remember throughout the high school and college years as the guys that really I'm like, okay, I'm going to coach. I want to look at the good stuff they did and try and replicate that stuff.
So how did you, to be honest, how did you do it at Orem High School? You win 3 straight. You have an amazing talent. Did you have this vision of what you wanted to be as a coach, or did you just figure it out and say, hey, I got these guys, we're just going to roll with it and figure it out as you go? Because there's a lot of stuff in high school athletics you have to deal with, administration. Money is always an issue. All these things play into it. How did you make it happen?
Yeah, great question. Going back to Bob Steele, the one thing I liked about him, I'd run through a wall for that guy. And so it really was trying to figure out how can I get that same thing out of these kids? Now, my degree at Utah State is in sociology, but I had a minor in psychology, and it was really youth and adolescence, or the sports psychology, youth and adolescent psychology, are the classes I took. And so every kid's different. So when you realize every kid's different, how do we motivate kids? How do we do these things? How do we take a sport that it really is, it can be monotonous day in, day out. Mm-hmm. It's hot. It's that time of year. You're wearing the helmet, the pads. I'm going to go bang my head against this kid, So how can we make it so this sport is fun? But it was really trying to bring in the family atmosphere. A lot of the shirts you printed were FOE,
yep,
or the word family on the back.
A lot of family.
So outside the football field, it was, hey, we're going as a group to the pool. We're going as a group to the movie. And so we always planned a lot of those events to make these kids really, not teammates, but I never allowed them to call each other teammates, whether it was the youth or high school level. We are family. Families are going to fight, families are going to have issues, but at the end of the day, we are family, and you will bleed to death for your brother. And so trying to get that MO, after that first year coaching back when the kids were third, fourth grade, we had our little year-end banquet there at Vivint. And I told them in that gym, I said, look around at your family here. Look around at your brothers here. And I said, you're going to have a lot of coaches come after you guys, a lot of coaches trying to recruit you away. I said, I promise you, if you guys will stick together and stay together as a family, you're going to have at least 2 or 3 championships in high school. And I made that promise. That's exactly what we did, because they did. They stayed together. Obviously, TIMU came after my kids, like they always do, but they decided to stick together. They believed in it. And we tried to change that culture too, where it wasn't just TIMU was the cool school in Utah County. Orem, and obviously that's why. Why do we have all the swag?
I was going to say, you made Orem cool.
Yeah, you tried to, Oregon started it right on the collegiate level. But I was a big believer in look good, feel good, play good, right? You're gonna eat good. That's what we used to always say. But it was really trying to change that culture, change that mindset, because I was a part of a lot of good teams when I was an assistant, and we got TIMU on the ropes several times. But TIMU just had that mental edge over those Orem kids, and they knew at some point Orem was going to roll over, TIMU was going to win. So we changed that whole mindset. And that's exactly like the year we won the second championship, TIMU had a game with us, and they voted not to play us. They had a team vote not to play us. Andy Stokes came up from St. George, from Dixie High, saw us on the schedule, had the kids in the locker room. And Raider DeMooney, I'm going to give credit right here because he's the only one that said, yeah, I want to play Orem. The rest of the kids said, no, I don't. And I think that's because they had been beaten by us so bad all through the youth, had not been not scoring on us, nothing. So we changed that whole culture, changed that whole mindset. And, and then it goes back to how do you run practices? Are you going to get out there and scrimmage and go crazy? It's the kids knew we don't line up and do wind sprints. They know period 4 is conditioning. The defense will do pursuit drill, which is a functional football drill, right? It's teaching kids how to get to the ball, but it's also conditioning them. The offense is doing hurry up and quick screen game. Again, it's functional to what they're doing, and it's functional to their training. So the kids also know I've got a 2-hour practice, right? I know it's done at this time. We had the periods on the scoreboard. We had the air horn every time a period was done. And they didn't have to worry about, like I did, I've got to save some energy for conditioning at the end. They knew that when the period went off, period 8 or 12, how many periods it was that day, it was done. Practice was done. There was no running. And so just trying to change that whole mindset, the whole culture of it, keeping kids healthy. I didn't play a lot of kids both ways. We didn't tackle during practice. Why? Because I need my studs come playoff time, right? Even though we won 4A and 5A titles, we really, student body wise, were 3A, 4A the whole time. And that 5A title, the last one I got, we were a very small 4A when it came to student body, and so just trying to balance all those. But yeah, going back to that mindset of what can we do, right? How do we do it is really what was effective and successful.
One thing that I always found impressive, and I love to see how it played out, was we always say, because you started using the Oregon O with the Orem stuff, and you started making Orem look cool, and all this swag started flowing. I could see you're just pumping this stuff into school, but I also could see, may sound hokey to some people, but you were an Orem guy.
Yep.
You won a championship or you were all in on Orem football, and now you have a guy that's come back, that's coaching. He's preaching Orem football and nothing but Orem football, and it just all work together.
Yeah, no, it is. And it's, it's kind of funny because you talk about trying to make it a little sexy, make it fun for the kids, because kids love that stuff. Coaches love that stuff though. My coaches were like, hey, what are we wearing? Because when I was in high school, I had a new shirt for them. That's all, we'd give them the shoes, the shorts, the different stuff. But every game, coaches would come in and they'd be like looking around the locker room because I'd have their, their little sideline pass with a brand new shirt on. So they're always like, what are we getting? What's going on? And they were just excited as the kids, so that little, it's little stuff, but they also knew if you're not going to play up to it. And as we, probably that third title we got, some of the kids that were a little entitled. And I was like, hey, we will wear the old stuff. We'll get this old stuff out. You guys haven't earned the right. Your older brothers have earned the right for some of this stuff. So it's kind of that balance, but it's fun. We had five uniforms. We had 4 helmets. We mix it up. We never wore the same stuff. And it's, it's fun stuff. So
can I ask, where does the money come from?
It's, Todd Peterson was our big donor, but he wasn't our only donor. Obviously
Todd Peterson, just for our listener, is...
Yeah, he was. He's retired now, but he's the one that started Vivint.
Okay,
right, and but he never used Vivint for that money. It was always his own. We put Vivint on the field, and he's like, you don't have to put that. It's my money. Whatever you guys want to do. But Todd was always super generous. But it was really, we needed a turf field. They rebuilt that whole school. They didn't do the turf field, so we were like, I think it was like 8th in line or something. We just got that new school, so they had us on there to do the turf field. But he's like, hey, what can I do to skip in line? Because my son's going to be going through here. Mm-hmm. This field is, that grass field we had from the 35 to 35 every October was just mud and sawdust. They bring the sawdust in. So he's like, let's improve this. Mm-hmm. Right. So he gave that money there, built the new school. We didn't have the weight equipment. So he paid for new weight equipment. But yeah, he was the big money. We had others. But it's funny too, because I think a lot of people would get jealous of that, and they don't know Heidemann at Provo, the big lawyer, he would give more to Provo High year to year, out excluding the field, excluding the weight room, than Todd would. So my operational budget at Orem High was less than Provo High's, where Heidemann is, right? So it's interesting when people go, well, you just won because of the money. No, we didn't. Look at Provo. When's the last time they won anything, right? They had more money. So it's interesting, but you need money, especially if you're going to go travel like we did. We wanted to play the Bishop Gormans, like you mentioned. We wanted to go, play some of the bigger schools from the Trinity League out in California, which we did. We went out there and had a fun game with Santa Margarita, probably one of the funnest games I've ever coached. And we walked away with the win on that one. And so he really helped us do a lot of those, but we also did a lot of fundraising, made the kids sell stuff, sell the cards, the banners. My own son, even though he was the head coach's son, he had to sell his piece and do it. So yeah, Todd's absolutely generous. Love the guy, but it wasn't the only money we came into. And, the kids earned a lot on their own as well.
Is Coach Garrett Dusher, is he can appreciate your Provo comment?
He probably won't, but that's all right. It's like they always say, if you don't like it, change it. If you don't like it, stop it. If you don't like the comment, go win. And they made this year 4A.
So you go your first year, you talked about you go 5-7. You could see some things happening. What were the biggest changes that happened between that year and the next year where you go 12-2 and win your first title?
Yeah, we revamped the whole coaching staff. My first year, I wanted to run practice right after high school, and so I was limited in the pool of coaches I could get. Mm-hmm. So I had a lot of coaches, that they were available at 3. I hadn't coached much with them in the past, and so that second year, I let most of the staff go. Held on to a couple of good guys. We moved practices back to 5:30. Then I could get guys that were paraprofessionals that were also working, but it was a lot better group of coaches. So we had coaches in the locker room pulling the same direction. We had kids in the locker room pulling the same direction. We lost 14 kids. Excuse me. We lost 14 kids after that first season, 11 which were starters. But we had kids that were pulling in the same direction, right? And that made the big difference. So thank you.
Water.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Lots of talking.
That's good. So Talk for a minute too about the importance of your assistant coaches, and especially in a lot of small schools. What happens is, we get some teachers, we get somebody that's out there, we try to see who's available. There's some kid may have played college here, so we try to get him to come back. Somebody else had some experience to try to come back. What role did your assistant coaches play in your success?
Yeah, another good question. My first year, I did the same thing. This guy played collegiately. This guy did this. This guy was, a friend of a friend who, same thing, had coached a couple years somewhere else. And so I started bringing those guys in who I didn't really know, right? And it was detrimental to our success because we had, defensive coaches trying to run private practices. We had a lot of stuff going on that just didn't mesh well. And so I looked at, when I came up through the youth, I had one guy. And the reason for that was, up until the 8th grade, I had one guy because he did exactly what I needed him to, right? I would call the offense defense, but he would help where he needed to. A guy named Charlie Peterson, who was awesome to help me out. And so I went back to, I need guys that will, are not afraid to check their ego at the door. Mm-hmm. And so we had a lot of meetings where myself, hey, I'm the head coach, but I'm checking my ego at the door, checking my title at the door. Let's talk about the issues, what's going on. And then we leave this room on a unified front. And so my last 3 years, that's exactly what we had. We had coaches that believed in the same stuff, same vision, same goals. What are we doing? How are we doing it? There was never, and I'm okay with questioning things. Hey, can we mix this up? What do you feel about this? Happy to field all those. But when those conversations are done, whether I go, yeah, let's mix it up, let's try that, or nah, let's stick with what we're doing. Let's go out there. And the kids never know any difference. Mm-hmm. We had my first year coaches fighting, going back and forth, different stuff. And it was such a mess that kids pick up on that, and so the kids start to become divided. We had fights in the locker room. And, so we had, end of my first year, we had a kid that was a 4-star, had a lot of offers as a freshman. And he started doing stuff and different stuff. And he showed up at a TMU practice one time, missed our playoff practice. And so cleaned out his locker. You're off the team. And everybody was shocked. How can you kick that 4-star? I'm like, because he's not doing what we need him to do. Mm-hmm. And so I think that really set the tone, revamped that staff, got kids, even though on paper we are probably less talented, those next couple of years, because we had a lot of good kids. Some moved back to Hawaii. Some went different schools. Some transferred to Skyridge, Timpview, all that different stuff. And oddly enough, all the kids that left my program, not a single one won a championship. A couple played for their new teams in a championship, but they didn't win.
Interesting.
And so it was kind of, the a-hole in me likes to kind of go self-satisfying and go, yeah, we stuck together. We were here and we won a championship and then went on to win a few more. So you just, in sports, as you have to have coaches that believe in the same thing. And I didn't, whether I'm an assistant or a head coach, it doesn't matter to me. At the end of the day, I want these kids to win. It doesn't matter. I had an assistant coach who was always wanting to flirt with other teams as their head coach because he wanted his name in the paper. I'm like, I don't care about that. I actually try and hide from the newspapers after the game, so I just go talk to the boys and go home and start breaking down huddle film. But a lot of coaches are looking, where's the paper? You go back and watch my championship games. You can always see the coaches who are following me around because they want the TV time. And so you got some of that stuff going on too. They're looking for Dave Fox somewhere, and I'm like, man, just whatever. It's not about that to me.
One thing that I've been thinking about, Andy, is the difference in the eyeballs and the people that are following the program. And I also think internally, say Gunnison High School, you don't have kids that are looking to bounce to North Severe High School or vice versa, or same with coaches. You just don't have the wandering eyes looking for greener pastures. What is it like having so many people looking at players, trying to get players, coaches trying to find a better place to be, trying to, buddy up with this coach, maybe bring players with them? What is it like in that environment?
Yeah, it's definitely competitive. And they've changed some rules. It used to be if you were an assistant, you could take your son with you. Then it changed to if you're a head coach and you get a new job somewhere, you can take that kid with a free pass. Because early on when I started coaching, it really was, hey, let's go get these assistants and bring their kids with us. So it was always kind of interesting. But you do, and you can get caught up in it. I probably did when I was an assistant, a little more than I should have. I was always worried about some of our kids going to Timpview, some of our kids maybe going back home to Hawaii. And so I spent probably too much time talking to parents, trying to talk them into staying. Then it turned into, no, you want to go. and not many people know this, but, Puka's mom, after we had even won state, was like, I want to take my kid elsewhere, maybe to Texas, maybe somewhere else. And I said, hey, I love your boy. He's going to break records here, which he did. He owns almost every record, not just in the state, but he's got some national records that'll probably never be broken. And I said, he's going to get that, but he's going to more importantly be around his family, right? His brother's on the team, and he's going to have so much fun doing what we're going to do here. But she was even shopping. And so, and I never tried to stop it. It was like, you're going to go, and that was always my philosophy is the door's open. I'm a big believer in the grass is greenest where you water it. And so whether you stay at Orem High or you go somewhere else, Gunnison, North Severe, Manti, wherever you are, if you water it, right? Because 90% of high school kids are very sheep-like. And so if they see, we had Cooper, we had Puka, we had Noah, we had Kingsley, we had Ethan Slade, loved being Orem Tigers. And so it just spread throughout where everybody loved being Orem Tigers versus when I first started there, we were almost having to talk our stars into staying because it was like, well, what if we went to Timpview? What if we went up there? We're going to win. Let's go. I'm like, no, we can win here. Right. But you guys got to believe and buy into it.
So would you say that environment still exists in Utah and Salt Lake County?
Oh, absolutely. And I think you're going to honestly see more of it. As you look at the programs that continue to win, right? Corner Canyon, we talked about before we started up, right? They're going to get a kid like Dart out of Davis, and you're going to see more kids moving into Corner Canyon. Skyridge is getting a lot of kids right now. They're people call that the new Timpview of Utah County. They're getting a lot. They've got that Polynesian pipeline with those kids coming in. Orem High still got some good kids, and we've been watching the games and going to the games. They've got some good young kids. I don't know, where they'll be with their youth. That's another piece. I took over the youth program when I started there because you have to have those organic kids to complement any inorganic kid who comes in. But you're going to continue to see, I think, the Timpview, the Orem, the Skyridge, the Corner Canyons, the Lone Peaks. I think because they have tenured coaches who have vested interest, right, and actually getting kids promoted, winning, doing things right, you're going to see, I think, even more kids going there. But it's still very competitive. And I know this last year, even at Orem High, Gabe Sewell was done. Lance Reynolds came in, and it was an immediate fire drill with kids looking to leave. Some kids didn't like Coach Lance. They didn't like what was going on. They did like Coach Gabe. And so I know the assistants there. I had players reach out to me, Coach, where should I go? So it was kind of that fire drill of what should I do now? And it's the same thing. Hey, water your grass. Go win some, games with your boys. I think even if you don't win a championship, but you do it with your kids you played with for 5-6 years, to me, it would mean a little more than just I went to Timpview for my senior year and won a championship, my opinion.
Interesting.
So that's just standard operating procedure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's so foreign to us. It's so different.
New coach comes in and kids now evaluate where they want to go.
Automatically. I mean, it was the day it was announced, I started getting texts. Some of the past coaches started getting texts. It was, what should we do? And I'm like, and I think part of that's the parents' fault.
Yeah.
Because the parents teach their kid. And again, I don't fault it because, if her and I, Janae, decide that, not decide, but if we're having a boy at 10, 12, whatever years from now, we're going to start looking at what the high schools are doing. You need to be, aware of what the situation is. Right. But my philosophy is, well, I live at Orem. I'm an Orem High Tiger. Like you mentioned, I won a championship here. I'm going to water that grass here, and make sure that when my son comes up through here, that's what it is. Now I'm at Orem High in 10, 15 years. I'm still living there and it's, being run where it's 2 wins. I'm going to look elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. So how does the actual process work? So say a kid is a junior in high school. He's a junior in high school. There's a change in coaches and he says, I don't like this new guy. I want out.
Yeah.
What realistically, what happens? Do they have to move somewhere? How does this work?
So really they have to move somewhere, full family move. Or what the kind of get out of jail free card that most parents do. I'm going to have uncle take full guardianship. I go pay the $500 to state. The judge signs off on it. The UHSA says nothing. It's done. That's who has full guardianship. You have those parents that get a little lazy and try and go, me and my wife of 30 years are separating. And so now it's a divorce situation, and so we've got to get paperwork and documentation from friends, families, neighbors about how our marriage has been on the rocks, which I think's, crazy. But there is a lot of loopholes in the rules there. And that's why you see kids. We had kids when I was at Orem as an assistant, as a head coach as well, go play elsewhere. Didn't even go through the paperwork process. But again, they were a high profile. I didn't want them if they didn't want to be there. And so I didn't even worry about it. They went on to play and whatever. But the other kids, they'll go kind of one of those 3 routes, and you can leave anytime you want to. And it gets granted.
Do administrators care?
I think some do, some don't. I had the opportunity to work with Eric Lofton. He was our VP over athletics, high school football coach out in California. He absolutely cared. That guy wanted Orem High to be the central hub for sports in Utah County. He and I got along very well. He was all about the out-of-state games. He was all about the DJ coming to the games for halftime, between plays. He was all about the fireworks after. And then he left, went to Lehigh, which has been having success, coming off titles, right? I think Eric Lofton's a big reason for that. I get a new guy coming in and, they start kiboshing everything. No, we don't want the DJs. No, we don't want this. No, we don't want that. We don't care about wins and losses. And so you get administrators that care and some that don't.
How many administrators did you piss off?
Oh, geez. I'll tell you, here's the answer. Job opens up. I applied. This year, I went back and applied. I went and met with Bob Steele, who was still the current acting AD, who was my mentor, and he was the guy that I kind of, when I first started, would talk to. He was my D coordinator I played for. And I went and had a meeting with him. And I said, hey, I'm applying. And he goes, no shot in hell do you have to gain a job back. and sadly enough, I said, why? Who do I need to talk to? What's the issue? And he goes, Jeremy, I don't know. He goes, you've got people that are upset that you come back to games and don't think you need to pay. Because I would just go through the gym. I had keys. I'd go through the gym and go to the football field. But, not just the titles, not just the $1 million plus I raised for the school. I gave 10 years of my life to that place. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I don't think I need to pay. Right? But if that's an issue, let me talk to who it is. Because when he made that comment earlier that year, I actually paid for 2 or 3 games. Whatever. But if I go there and there's a long line, yeah, I go walk to the gym. Just what I do. But I decided to go through the interview process anyways. And it was the VP, the principal, and Bob Steele. Bob Steele walked out because he knew what was going to happen. The principal, who did not like me, didn't ask me a single question. And then you had the new VP who was new to it. Didn't know me, hadn't met me. And the interview was, hey, you've got an hour. Tell us why you should be the head coach. No questions, no anything. So I went through my philosophy, went through what I had done there previous, went through what I had planned to do, my plan of action, how we were going to get back to winning state championships, etc. And then obviously didn't get the job. Well, not only did I not get the job, Lance Reynolds, who was my OC when I was there, had asked me going into the interview process, if I get the job, will you come be my DC? I said, I'll sit down and talk with you. Well, they told him, you get the job, you cannot hire Jeremy. And so I reached out to the VP, what's going on? Let's talk about it. And I actually had tried to get a hold of him before my interview so we could, hash out anything he had heard. Right. And he goes, I don't know what to tell you. There is no reason. All I can tell you is Orem High feels like we need a little time away from you. That's the answer I got. I've got the emails. I'm happy to share those if you want to put them on the podcast. But that's what the reason I was given. And still to this day, no clue. So I think it's a long list.
I understand what you're saying. So you go 3 straight. You win 3 titles.
One of 6 people to go 3 straight in the history of football in Utah. I mean, that's not something that is not just some fly-by-night thing. You think of all the high schools and all the coaches and everything that's happened. One of 6 individuals to win 3 straight to three-peat in football, and not to take anything away from. We talk about this. We're not naive enough to know there's different levels. Obviously, classifications, things happen differently, right, at different schools. You're at a high-profile school in Utah County, and you do that. You can have all the money in the world. At the end of the day, you still have to make things happen.
You got to have kids. You got to develop kids, and you got to win games. So when did you decide you were done?
So after the 3 titles, that year before, obviously was running the off-season program. I had a job change, which was a big piece of it. That had me covering the West Coast versus the East Coast. I was going through a divorce. That was another one. We had COVID going on, so I had my kids at home. Hunter was home from Utah State. And so all those moving pieces. I was the type of guy that I I was out of school more than most teachers. It was really giving 30 to 40 hours a week on top of my full time, 30 to 40 hours giving out to the school. And I knew with my situation, I couldn't give that. And I also knew with COVID going on that year, there was going to be several games that were probably missed. And there was a full month they went without a game. And so I knew I couldn't take time away from my personal life, my kids where I needed to be, give those kids what they deserve to have. So, we went through, and it wasn't until really week 3 that I officially stepped away, right? I went through the off-season program, did everything, and then I named Gabe Sewell the interim for those first 2 weeks, then went and met with the principal and Bob Steele and said, hey, I can't do this year. Mm-hmm. The agreement was at that time that I was taking that year off. Mm-hmm. And they told me, let's sit down in December after the season and let's look at this. And I agreed to that. So yeah, it's fine. The principal, Lynn Jarrett, he's not a Jeremy Hill fan, said you'll have to reapply, which whatever. He had his little power play there. I didn't take offense to it. I said, fine, I'll reapply after all I've done. But let's sit down in December. Season ends. December comes around. I get a text from Bob Steele. Thanks for all you've done for Orem High. That was a text. Odd what's going on. And then my phone starts blowing up because the school Twitter account announced Gabe Sewell head coach. They never opened it up. They never talked to me. I really felt like they were trying to figure out a way to get rid of me. And so this was kind of where I stepped away, right? And it was the right decision. I don't regret what I did. I needed to step away for personal reasons. But I had planned to go back and sit down with them in December and go, okay, let me just get some things in my personal life settled, and then let's go back to what we were doing. Mm-hmm. And that conversation never happened.
Interesting.
I always find it fascinating in this situation here. And football is one of those sports that we always talk about alphas. Football is led by alphas. And there can only be so many alphas in a room. And in order to do what Temp U does and what Corner Canyon does and Lehigh now and what Orem did, you have to have alphas leading that charge. You just have to. It's interesting to me when those alphas come in conflict with administration. They love the winning, but there's always this, someone's going to lose out.
Yeah. And it's usually the coach.
Yeah. The coach is
almost always
the lowest guy on the pay scale is losing out.
It is. And, Lou Wong had a lot of success at Timview. Mm-hmm. Got in trouble. Not in trouble, but he started butting heads with the admin. He lost out. Hasn't won a title since. If Kerr up at Corner Canyon got into it with his admin, he would lose out. Despite all he's done and the big win streak and the multiple titles, he would be out. Mm-hmm. And it's proof right there. I didn't, and I never had crazy arguments. I never had crazy disputes, with my admin. At the end of it, he came in as a new principal, his first job as a principal, right, at a high school. And so he didn't know, he's not an athlete guy, and he didn't know how to handle this team that we had built. And that was going into my son's senior year. We had 3 out-of-state games. We had DJs. We had fireworks, because it was like the boys' senior year. And so let's go out with a bang. Let's do all these things. Let's go play these big schools. We had petitioned that year to go 5A. We got denied. So we knew, there's a reason we printed T-shirts for the state championship game we put on in the third quarter that said back-to-back. We knew what was going to happen that year. But I thought, no, let's try and go 5A. We couldn't. Okay, let's go play the best preseason schedule we can with the Gormans, Santa Margaritas, the Highlands up in Idaho, everybody. And he just didn't know how to handle that stuff. And so that's really where he butted heads. He also, tried to bring a lot of church stuff into school, which I think those should be separate, the church and school. And so he felt like my kids, because they were using swear words on the field. And I told him several times, I walk from my football office to your principal office, and I hear every swear word in the world. But are you a bad principal? Or am I a bad coach because my kids use that on the field? And so it was like those kind of weird conversations where he was like, I want these kids to be missionaries. Like, well, you can't say that here because half my kids are not even LDS, And so there was that kind of weird stuff that happened. And he felt like I was trying to pull stuff over on him with these out-of-state trips, even though we had got him approved a year before, right? I'm like, all the approval papers were there. And so just that kind of weird stuff. But it absolutely, those guys going back to, they like to control whose paycheck and so they couldn't control me because I didn't get a paycheck from them, and so we're going to do the stuff, but everything we did was the approval. All my kids always sat up the front that we had a 3.3 team GPA. Like the kids were, being taught to be great young men, but there just was something he didn't like about me, and I obviously didn't like him either.
Interesting enough, one of two of the other people that are on that list for three-peat championships, Eric Kerr is one of them, and Louis Wong is on one of them.
There it is.
You're in some pretty elite company there, Jeremy. Great
coaches.
Let's talk for a minute about the UHSAA.
My favorite people.
I think there's a love. If you've been around high school athletics a lot, there's maybe a love-hate relationship there. They play a huge part in everything that we do, right? People have good experiences. People have bad experiences. What role did they play in your role as a coach of Orem High School? What role do you think they should play, and how do you think that could be improved?
And I'll first say there's probably some really great individuals that are part of the UHSA. I really think there are. I think there are some folks there that really do have the best interest of high school athletics. And I don't mind. I wasn't a fan of the RPI when it came out, but I think they were trying to look at some stuff to how can we better this. And so some of that goes on. But at the same time, you get some people in control there that don't like you, don't like me, don't like Orem High, don't like who it might be. And then we can't really see with the RPI. What is it? What's really dictating where and how we're playing, what our seed is, and a lot of different stuff. They obviously came after me. We wore white uniforms as the home team in the championship, which had been done how many times before? You watched Bingham versus East. What is it? Blue versus red. My first year, we went out to Bingham. They said, hey, we're going to wear whites. Can you wear your darks? Sure. My second game, I called the state. We had East. It was a TV game. We had just got white uniforms with chrome numbers before anybody did it. We wanted to wear those at home because we were on TV. Called the state. Do I need to do anything? I actually called the UHSA. Do I need to do anything? No, as long as the other coaches are fine with it. You're good. So I did it. The championship game, the kids, my senior kids will always keep their white uniform. And so we came to that championship game. They wanted to wear white because that was the uniform they're going to keep. My seniors were. So I called the head coach at Dixie. Hey, are we cool? Do you mind wearing darks when we're whites? Here's why. And he said, I have no problem with that as long as we can keep the locker room assignments. Great, no big deal. So then we get up there, and I've got the head of the UHSA come over to me, threatening to make us forfeit the game, threatening all these different threats. And I'm like, the kids are here. What's going on? I don't care if you want to spot them 21 points. Go ahead. It doesn't matter, right? But this is the agreement. And I had done it via text, so I had a paper trail. Here's all the text messages. So they get upset, whatever. I don't think much about it. And then fast forward to the off season, I have to go meet with the UHSA, which was probably my 7th or 8th time I'd been there. I got called up there twice as an 8th grade coach. I wasn't even I'd been fired from Orem High. I was. When I got fired from Orem High, I had to go up there twice from, being an FBU coach. So it's just, they'll call you up there for whatever reason. But then they said, hey, what happened here? What's going on? And they started telling me they started citing rules, but in the rules, it says nothing about having to wear those uniforms. They later have now changed it. Right? It's probably called the Jeremy Hill rule because they've now changed it to you have to wear these certain colors. But again, why does that stuff matter? Right? So then they handed me a 2-game suspension. So it's just those type of things. They control things how they want to. And I know it's always going to be the good old boy network. It doesn't matter what level you're on. But I also know they didn't want us to win that 3rd title. That's when the RPI came out, and we had our first 2 losses when I was not even allowed to coach. We're at Corner Canyon at Bishop Gorman. We also did not have Noah Sewell for the first 6 games of the season. And even the next couple, he came back, right? He was still getting back from that serious injury he had. And so we still co-region the thing. We had 1 region loss, which was to Lehigh. And we would have won that game, but we pulled Noah at halftime. He was a little gimpy, and I didn't care about the region title. I didn't care about region it by myself. None of that mattered to me. So we come out of that, probably the toughest schedule in Utah that year, and we end up with like a 12 seed. And I'm like, what is going on here? And then you have Timpview, who was the next best team. Lehigh was up there. I think we were 11, 13, 14 in the RPI, and that's who was in the Final Four, was 11, I think it was 11, 12, 14, or whatever it was, right there in the low teens, along with the Salem Hills team, who was a 1 or 2 seed. I was 1 seed. And it's just like, you can't tell me some system picked that. I know for a fact they didn't want us to be back there for a 3rd time. They made us go through Brighton. They made us go through Olympus, who were 1 seeds. And then that game at Olympus, you can go watch it on film. It's one of the worst officiated games ever to let them come back in and almost beat us. So it's really, you look at it and I think there are some good people there that try and do some good stuff, but you get people in charge that don't like certain coaches, don't like certain schools. They'll do what they can to try and, change your trajectory of your chances of winning. 100% agree with that.
Interesting.
I'm thinking about the jersey thing, right?
we jokingly were saying we need to ask Jeremy about Jersey Gate.
Yeah, it is Jersey Gate.
And the reason why I chuckle about that slightly is because in that instance, it was a state championship game when you were given bigger threats of violating the jersey rule. In basketball last season, funny enough, Gunnison and North Sevier did the same thing too. They text back and forth and decided that Gunnison wanted to wear black jerseys at home. Basketball's different, obviously.
Sure.
They wanted to wear black jerseys at home, and North Sevier said, okay, that's fine, whatever. You wear your black jerseys, wear our white jerseys. And the official came, and the official was really pissed off that they had wore black jerseys, and you start the game with a technical, big deal, right?
Yeah.
But the same principle is like, is that a big deal? I don't know. Apparently it is. Apparently it is a big deal.
I think, and again, I'm sure because stuff has happened, that's probably why they're more alert to it. There's new rules created around it. So. But I just remember all my time as an assistant, and even my first year, we were always being asked to wear different uniforms. Never had a problem with it. Never had an issue with it. You watch, and I actually, when I went and met with them, I took in pictures of our games. I took in pictures of us against Bingham. I took in pictures of Bingham versus East, which was kind of that big rivalry a few years ago. Mm-hmm. And they did the little BYU Utah thing, dark red versus dark blue. And I'm like, all this has happened and nothing has ever been said until Orem High, Jeremy Hill show up in a white uniform in the state championship, and then all hell breaks loose. The point where he's over there going, nah, you might have to forfeit this game. You may have to. He was asking me if we had different uniforms back in the locker room. And I'm like, you think the team that just traveled from Dixie brought a second set? We didn't either. But it doesn't matter until you get someone with a little bit of power and they try and flex that power.
So obviously you would anger the wrong people at the UHSAA. That would be correct?
No, and it goes back to what I said earlier. As a fired free agent coach, I was the head coach of that FBU team. And I had schools complaining that I was recruiting kids. I was just coaching kids. I didn't even know where my own kids were going, which is proof because I kept 95% of them down on a freshman team, which was actually a city league team, right? Up there, it's a little bit different. So I could take those kids wherever. They didn't declare anywhere. They didn't do their first ride of declare for open enrollment. So I didn't even know where my own kids were going, including my own son. But I had to go up twice on two different occasions and sit down with UHSAA, saying, hey, you're recruiting kids to Orem. I don't even coach at Orem. And so the attorney up there, I actually like him. He was always like, why are we here? Do you guys have proof? No. We've got this Facebook post where Adam Lagaw has this, this kid who's playing it up at West in a Riven hoodie. That was his brand back then. Mm-hmm. And the attorney's like, this is nothing. What are we doing? Wasting people's time. And so, yeah, and it goes back to there, and then we had kids that would move in. And I'd always go support those kids and just, hey, here's what it is. Here's the actual proof of stuff. And I would go support. And, so they just, I don't know if they got tired of seeing me up there or what we were doing, but, the amount of stuff was just unreal to me.
We Andy and I will have a visit with the UHSA this year.
We got on the radar.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Good.
So I think
I'm excited for that one.
And neither one of us are employed by the school. Or
maybe it's because we're Hills.
Maybe. They said they must be related to Jeremy.
Absolutely.
We, without going into a lot of detail, the fourth row, right? Our whole vision of this fourth row has been, we started it, memory of Jackson, right? That was kind of our backbone. But more important, well, maybe not more importantly, that was really the most important thing. But our goal was to bring everybody in these rural communities together, right? We kind of set up these walls because we play each other and we have these rivalries. And then when you leave high school, you realize, hey, he's just like I am, right? So we said, let's bring this community together. We saw what Jackson did. I mean, it was amazing as we'd went around, the last couple of years where he couldn't do a lot, but we'd go to basketball games and they'd have these fundraisers. And I'm like, this is freaking awesome. So we put that in the background and said, let's keep that going. So we've developed this a little bit of a following, kind of this grassroots stuff. It started year over year. And every year we kind of pick our fourth row team for basketball. it's our Deseret News All-Star team. We feel like it's a little more legitimate because we actually know the kids. We don't ask coaches to do it. So anyway, just a side note there. So the first year we said, let's have an All-Star game. How cool would this? We invite all these kids to do an All-Star game. We just kind of threw it out. Then last year we said, all right, we're going to make this happen. So we started covering girls basketball. We've got a gal from Salina who was a fantastic all-state player, played at the next level. We had her on the podcast and doing stuff. So we picked our teams, had 20 boys and 20 girls committed to come to Gunnison. We had coaches. We had Team Hyde.live, which does all the local broadcasting. We had officials. We had everything set up. We had done everything that we knew what to do right. The game was going to be on a Thursday night. Tuesday, I can't even remember what all happened, but all hell broke loose. Essentially, the USSAA got, how they didn't know what was going on, I don't know. I ended up getting a call from them, and they said, you guys can't do this. Why not? Well,
we can't really
tell you why, but we just strongly advise you don't. So in the interim, there's an email that goes out to the coaches. It all kind of falls apart. We just crushed it. The amount of effort and level that went into that thing, we had in our minds the 20 best boys and the 20 best girls in the 2A classification that had committed with their parents and coaches and everything else. We're going to be at Gunnison High School. It was going to be just a cool event to get everybody. Nobody's benefiting. Nobody's doing anything other than we're just going to recognize some kids for what we're doing. And we couldn't get an answer as to why we couldn't do it.
And I think
and so that was at the point where, like, anyway, there's still some real bitterness there.
As there should be.
So Andy followed up with, what do we need to do to make this happen? We're not quite sure what to do. Yeah. Well, can someone please tell us, is this a yes or a no? Or is this you're just advising us not to do it because why?
Yeah.
So that's why we're going to go revisit that again this year.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you are, because it's interesting and it's so frustrating. Tell me why. And there's no answer given. Well, how do we need to do this? No answer given. And I think that's my biggest irk is when you look at the UHSAA district level employees, and I'll just say it now, I can because I'm not a coach. You get a lot of people that are very lazy, and they're all afraid of making any type of wave that might have them lose their job. So I would love it if someone's on that board to go, this is phenomenal. Let's do it. You know, they used to do the All-Star games. I played in one, right? They used to do that. They used to do the coaches versus kids game at the end of the football season. All that's gone away. It takes someone to go, I don't care if it's, politically wrong. I'm going to maybe not get that promotion I want, because they all want to get to that nice, cushy, comfy job. They go, yeah, this is a great idea. Let's do it. And they're afraid, what if a kid gets hurt? What if a kid gets it? But you know what? You can get insurance for those things. All the kids can sign waivers. It's very easy to go, this is a great idea, right? Make sure you have your insurance. Make sure the kids sign waivers. Go play. Because it shouldn't be they shouldn't be the police to stop that when you have this great idea. You're now taking this opportunity from the kids. Why? They don't even know why. So I'm glad you're having them on.
So that's what we're hoping is to push the issue and just present as many things as positive. And let's figure it out. Let's do the work and let's figure it out and make it happen.
Let's just do what makes sense, right? At the end of the day, do kids care if they switch jerseys? No. So why does somebody else care if you? I guess we have rules and we have regulations in the background, but at the end of the day, does it really matter? And that's kind of our thing with a lot of things we do. It's like, all right, we do this. Why do we do that? Well, because somebody said so. Well, why though? Does it even make sense? If it doesn't matter to the kids, why should it matter to the adults?
Oh, I agree. And that's, it's always kind of a work in progress, right? The rules or regulations, then explain it. Why? And I think you're spot on. Let's explain it and let's make it the best we can. And I love that you guys, as just completely third-party independents, going, here's the kids we think are the best. Because we all know how the all-region team works. We all know how the all-state team works. I know how the voting goes. I've been a part of it. I've seen it. I know what happens. I know what coaches, the Excel sheet that comes in. You get some coaches with inflated stats. You get some coach with real stats. You get some coach who's so lazy, doesn't even put his kids on the sheet. So if you don't know what's going on,
true, yes.
it is. And so I'm like, nah, we played against this kid. He was super good. I'm going to write him in. And I was told one year, you can't write him in. He wasn't on the ballot. I'm like, the kid is phenomenal. He's an all-state kid. The kid was amazing. The 2 game films before me, and then that we studied, and then watch him play against us. And when he did against some of our kids, I'm like, that kid's amazing, deserves it. Well, because the coach is too lazy, or the coach control, they rank it. So I love that you guys are going, hey, independently, here's the best.
Yeah. And it's been a lot of fun. And not only that, but we say, hey, we went and watched this kid 6 times independent. I had nothing to do with this kid is legit for this reason. And we talk about him all year long. And so anyway, it was a sore spot last year. It still is a sore spot for us, mainly because we were doing it only to recognize the kids. That was our only purpose. We were getting, in fact, we're basically paying to do this stuff. We put all this thing for the kids. We weren't going to charge them to come. A lot of these all-star games are like, hey, Jeremy, let your kid come. Give us $100 and your kid can come play. We're like, no, parents don't pay. Kids don't pay. We had sponsors. We got them all this swag package and everything. All you guys got to do is show up. We'll give you dinner and everything else. And it's like, you don't want to do that? Why? Well, can't really tell you, but we don't want you to do it. Okay, so...
It makes no sense. The all-star games that I coached in, the Army game, the Blue Gray my son played in, it's all so fun for these kids. And it's such a great experience. And a lot of those kids are done playing, right? They'll never play again, but they were invited to play this all-star game, one more chance to go put it on. And that's a frustrating part. Why can't we?
Yeah.
So I'm glad you're getting it on. Hopefully they'll come in and say, as long as you do X, Y, Z, you can run it, because I love the idea.
Yeah. So hopefully.
What do you think is the current state of high school football? Where does it go from here?
I think you're going to probably kind of see, a little more like college football, where you're seeing power conferences, right? Teams are starting to go into the teams we mentioned before, the Corner Canyons, the Sky Ridges, the Orems, the Timpviews. They're going to, I still think, get stronger, because kids, parents of kids still want their kids to ultimately play for a winner. Mm-hmm. They want them to have opportunity to be seen. And so when they know, hey, this kid's, getting all these D1 offers, all these schools are coming through, I'm going to get them over there. And I think it's few and far between now where a lot of these schools are hiring guys that just are there as a warm body. And so, you're going to have those teams continue to suffer. You look at they reclassified everybody again this year. And a lot of those teams that used to be really good teams are now just hanging out in 4A now, right? Trying to go, do we have enough to go maybe win in 4A? We couldn't in 5A. We couldn't do those type of things. So I think you'll continue to see teams move around a little bit, but the powerhouses, I think, will stay and probably continue to get stronger. Those weaker teams will continue to get weaker, I believe.
That's fascinating. It's such an intriguing discussion.
Such
again,
a different world,
because we're in a different universe really in rural schools, because almost everybody, with the exception, the one thing that kind of plays in and out with us, and 2A really has been hit hard by this over the years, are the public and charter schools. Yep. So as the private schools, LCAs of the world, right? They start in 1A because they have these small enrollments, and they kind of come up through the 1A ranks, and they just pound everybody to death, and then they move up to the next level. And Juan Diego did that back in the early 2000s.
They
came through
2A.
Baseball, basketball. I mean, nobody could compete with them, mainly because we're on a different level here. I know every kid that's going to play at Gunnison High School unless somebody moves in from now for the next 5 or 6 years. But we got these kids that roll in every year, these other schools, and that's why that debate becomes so heated at the smaller level, and why I don't think it becomes such an issue at the 4 and 5A level is because they have so many kids that it's irrelevant, right? It's like at Orem High School, I really don't care because you guys can do what you want. I'm running my program. I got enough kids. Gunnison High School, or your Knab or Beaver, Enterprise, in these small schools, we got no options. And so these teams roll through, and we're like, they're nothing we can do. And so we're screaming as loud as they can to the UHSAA saying, hey, this isn't fair. And it appears it just falls on deaf ears. We're like, well, we let it go long enough. Eventually they just go up in classifications like LCA.
Yep.
And eventually it kind of just falls away. But it's interesting how those things kind of change.
That's kind of why we wanted to talk. You're probably like, why do you care about all this transferring and stuff like that? Because it's normal, commonplace up there. But if the 2A classification and 1A, which is where Gunnison is at now, that's been the big beef for years, is to help level the playing field and remove teams that can go get kids. Like LCA as a private school can get kids.
Yeah.
And like last year they were loaded.
Yeah.
I mean, with D1 kids on their team playing against
1A schools, and it's just and you can see where the rural folks are saying, I have this kid, I have these kids, like you have at a smaller level. All right, they can win a state championship, and then somebody comes in and just blows them up, and they're like, this isn't right. We need somebody to help us, and they just don't have enough of a voice to be able to do that. So it's intriguing how there's really two different universes of football. You got the fall rural schools, really, and then you move up to Utah County, Salt Lake County, and Davis County, and it's
different universe.
It's a whole different world.
Yeah, it's different, but you're still, our second championship, when we petitioned, we screamed, we yelled, let's go 5A, at least just in football. And because of the way it was set up, we're told no. And so we knew, like that whole year, we averaged almost 60 points in the playoffs. Our margin of victory was 46.5 points a game. We set a bunch of these records, but we wanted to play, the Corner Canyons. We wanted to play the Lone Peaks. We wanted to play those teams. So definitely it's different, but there are some similarities. So I get it.
Yeah. The other thing we wanted to talk about, we couldn't miss this. Talk about, if you would, specifically some of your players, some of the ones that are still playing now. And just the ones that came to my mind, Puka, Noah Sewell, Lagaz playing, Ethan Slade. Funny story. I have a funny story about Ethan Slade I need to tell you. Jacob Robinson, I see him quite a bit at the Cougar games. He's playing really well. Kingsley's back. Mm-hmm. If you could just talk about some of these kids, what it's like to go see them play and just your relationship with them.
Yeah, it's fun. We were actually laying in bed this morning and I was texting back and forth with Puka, right? Because we were going to go to the Denver game, but they're holding him out. He's just having a phenomenal camp. McVay loves him. Cooper Kupp's kind of take him under his wing. And I'm telling you, that kid right now has a very good shot at being Rookie of the Year. And it's something that's so fun to watch these kids as they come in. They wear their different jerseys as they're in 6th, 7th grade, and they talk about the NFL. But to watch Noah get drafted, Puka get drafted, Kingsley next year, if he does what he does and stays healthy this year, top 5, top 3 pick maybe, out there playing. If Lagai has a good season at Utah State, he's got a shot. Robinson, you just mentioned, that's the dark horse. He's a kid right now that is doing so many good things. I think he's got a shot of being drafted or being picked up with a team, which is kind of funny. I got a text from his dad 3-4 months ago thanking me because he was a situation where Jacob was a phenomenal slot. The kid was amazing on offense, but him and Ethan Slade were my two that were phenomenal receivers. But I didn't need him there. We had Puka, we had some other kids, and I said, you guys, if you listen to me and make this switch to defense, okay, you're going to be playing this at least on Saturdays. And so I got a text from Jacob's dad 3-4 months ago. Thanks so much. I know I was upset at you at the time. I know I didn't like it. Jacob didn't like it, but he was a freshman All-American, right? Mm-hmm. And now he's being talked about as maybe, if you saw, I think it was one of the former players at BYU, Logan, I think it was, talking about Jacob may be the best corner to ever come through BYU. Wow. And it's all stuff that I'm like, this is what I saw back then with those two guys, but they both just, little kids want to be offense, right? It's like in baseball. I want to play the infield. It's an insult if I have to go play the outfield. They thought it was an insult at the time to play defense, and they both got their sprinkle. Jacob, actually his senior year, we needed him against Alta. We threw him 2 deep bombs just to secure that game that we got the win without Noah. But it's interesting to watch those kids that now going, Coach, you were right. You knew that I had a future on defense, but sometimes it's a hard sell when they're in high school and it's a hard sell to the parents. So it was interesting you brought him up because, Dad sent me that text 3 months ago going, thanks so much. I know we didn't like it, but thanks so much. So
Ethan, he's been playing. I've seen him some at safety. I've seen him at some of those positions. Is that where he's going to land?
I think he carries that frame where if he put on a little bit more muscle, I think he could be a linebacker. Or where he is that walked up safety who can help because the kid he doesn't have that natural smooth quickness that other kids have, but he's got that nasty meanness and that nose for the ball to always be in the right spot at the right time. I mean, Ethan was one of my favorite high school kids to coach because the amount of stuff, he got more out of his body than anybody I've ever seen. The kid just always knew what was going on, was always in the right place. And his, especially his junior year, but even he had a great senior year too, put up numbers that were just ridiculous. For a long time, he was leading the state in tackles, from the safety corner position, our Tiger position, and doing some good stuff. So it's been fun watching.
My funny story about Ethan Slade, never met him before, but we were at Utah State summer basketball camp. And I saw, just looking through the schedules, I saw Orem was playing. I thought, I wonder if Puka's going to be playing, right? So we go find Orem, sit down and start watching. Puka's not there, but there's this kid playing with his hair on fire. And he was an absolute maniac. And there was a lady sitting next to me. I said, I introduced myself. Ben, I said, do you know Jeremy Hill? She goes, oh, yes, I know Jeremy Hill. So she introduces herself. It was Ethan Slade's mom.
Okay.
I said, is that your son Ethan out there? And sure enough, that was Ethan out there playing with his hair on fire. That's my only story of Ethan Slade. And you were exactly correct. He was a wild man.
Yes. I mean,
noticeably wild man.
One gear is all he has. And I've got a lot of fouls in basketball, but in football, sure helped him. And I love seeing him out there. Jay Hill, the new DC over at Butte, loves Ethan, which was kind of funny because Jay and I played college football together. Right. And so I've known Jay for a long time. Love Jay. He's a great coach. And when Ethan was coming out of high school, we had an offer at SUU, but you're a white DB. You just don't have a lot of luck. So we had an offer at SUU. He ended up taking that preferred walk on to BYU, but I spent so much time trying to get Jay Hill to take him, and he just wouldn't do it. And now Jay's at BYU, Ethan's at BYU, and Jay loves him. So I'm hoping, him and Ethan back there in the backfield will do some good stuff this year.
It's exciting.
Secondary.
What is it like seeing these guys play on the big stage?
It's so
knowing that you have been with them the entire journey.
Yeah, it's so fun to watch these kids just realize their dreams. And it's interesting because you get a lot of, people that maybe did a personal, session with Puka, and now they're like, I was his receiver coach, different stuff. So and again, I don't care. I could be out there trying to, say that was my kid, my whatever. It doesn't matter to me. I've been with them through the journey. I was with Puka all the way from 7th grade on. I was fortunate enough to coach the All-American game where he played in it and was named Polynesian Player of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year. And so to me, they're more like my sons. And so now as I'm watching them out there, watching what they're doing, it's so much fun to me to see these kids reach their dreams because it's not an easy path. A lot of these kids in high school want to play collegiately, and I let them know it's hard work. It sucks, right? You have to embrace the suck. If you do, it's worth it when you get to those Saturdays when it's your turn, when your name's called. But the amount of kids we put into college, I think half of them don't end up playing past a year or two. So to watch these kids actually stick through it, go through it, Puka, Noah, Kingsley next year, hopefully Cooper next year, Jacob next year, and who knows, it's so much fun.
Did you ever put down on paper how many kids you have helped get to the collegiate level?
I haven't put it on paper. It's funny. It's the old lineman in me. Doesn't care if my name's on stuff. Doesn't care whatever. We just want to win. And so I know we helped a lot of kids get to, and it's not just the ones we just talk about, but we had a lot of kids going to William Penn. We had a lot of kids going to New Mexico Military. We had a lot of those kids free school. And if you want to play, we could usually find a kid. There was a school, a D3 back in Minnesota. I had 2 kids that, didn't even really play their senior year. We got them opportunities out there. And it's just because, when you win, right, the opportunities come. When I was an assistant, we weren't winning. We had some studs, but we couldn't get that many looks because you're not winning. Coaches don't care. You're not winning, not coming from a winning program. And so now, and I don't know how many, 20, 30, 40, whatever, how many kids it is. There's a lot. We still have a lot still playing, which is awesome. But for me, it was really, do you want to play? Do you have the desire to play? We'll try and help you find a spot for you.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
I've always just been fascinated. One, you've been a cousin of ours, and so we've watched from a distance the success you've had, and it's been fun to talk about. And obviously, I was a coach here at basketball at Gunnison for 10 years, so I at a small microscopic level, I understand the way you're speaking of the journey and the things, the frustrating things of being a coach with administration, the things you have to deal with. One thing that people can't see from that level, they can't see the impact you have on kids. They don't feel that or see that, the connection that you have and the connection kids and what you do for kids. That's what I think is so special. What you've done here is there's just lists of kids here that would say, hey, Coach Hill has got my back and I'll run through a brick wall for him. So hats off to you. I know you probably pissed off a lot of people along the way. That's okay.
Well,
it's okay at the end of the day.
And you're spot on. You know, we're talking about the stuff on paper here today. But what people don't realize, aside from, you know, being there for them, helping them get to, you know, these college opportunities, to me, it's those 3 a.m. texts. I think I got my girlfriend pregnant. I smoked weed for the first time. My girlfriend's ex-husband just showed up with a knife. And those are all real texts I've gotten, real phone calls at 3 a.m., 2 a.m. And it's a lot of these kids don't have a father or a father figure in their life. And that's really the impact. And that's the stuff. And I don't even talk about it. You don't see it on the trophies. You don't see the newspapers, but really just being there for these kids, the amount of kids that, you know, were my son's friends that lived at the house for different times, that needed to get out, needed the different things, you know, needed food. They weren't being fed at home. Those type of things that you'll never be on paper. That's what parents, administrators will never understand, as you know, what a coach does for these kids. You know, and I would hope if my kid never felt comfortable enough to come talk to me, he had that coach or that role model in his life to go with those tough topics and go, hey, I need some help. What do I do here?
And that's where I go back a little bit to the UHSAA discussion that I had. Is one of the great things that we've been able to talk to a lot of people inside of our realm within 2A, right? Coaches, players, you know, administrator, different things we've been able to talk. When you start peeling people back, you realize there's this human element that you can't put in a set of rules. And unfortunately, the school level and the districts level, they live in these sets of rules. And for them, they learn to live inside of that. When you don't work inside of that, the rest of us that are on the outside are like, it just doesn't make sense. We're here trying to develop kids. We're here trying to win football games. We're here trying to appease parents. What they don't see is all this stuff that you talked about today. Most of that they never see. All I see is Jeremy on Friday night, and I hear the complaints from the parents. That's all I see. I see 1% of 100 of what really has to go on. And when you win, it's like, oh yeah, it's nice because I'm from Orem High School and I really appreciate it. But when stuff hits the fan, they're like, well, you know what? I got to turn a blind eye because here's the rules, and I can't do that. And it's unfortunate that there's that system, and I don't understand the system because I don't work in it. A lot of it just doesn't make sense. But what we've realized over the last 3 years is if it doesn't make sense to the kids, let's fix it. Yep. Let's make it work, because if it doesn't, it's all foo-foo stuff. and that's what I keep thinking in my head today. All these things, I think winning sometimes makes villains out of people.
Completely agree.
You see that. And I think if you talk to a lot of programs that win and they consistently win, there's this villain element for some reason, because it's like they must be doing something different because we can't figure that out. No, what you do is you find out when you start opening the kimono and you see everything that's really involved, there's a hell of a lot of work and blood and sweat and tears and all these things that go into it. And people just aren't willing to do that. They just want the accolades. They want the Jeremy Hills at my school because he's going to win 3 state football championships, but they don't want to have to do anything else.
No, my favorite saying is winners do what losers won't do, or not willing to do, right? And I think you're spot on is, you know, if it's not good for the game, not good for the kids, let's fix it.
Yeah.
And going back to the RPI, I know it's a work in progress, but you can't tell me what the formula is. So what are we really looking at here? You know, and there's a million things that go into that. It's like you kind of tell it's the dumbest thing ever. Why is it every year? And especially my last year there, we've got double-digit seeds as the semifinalists. It tells you right there that there's something off. Whereas other teams, we played that Salem Hills team my last year. They were a 1 seed. And they were so panicked in the second quarter. They were going for it on 4th down, their own territory. And it was, you know, a blowout game the first half. They had no business being up there at the turf at Utah with the other 3 teams that were up there. You know, but yet you had a very good Olympus team we knocked out the week before, a very good Brighton team we knocked out that should have absolutely had the right to be there with Orem, Timpview, Lehigh. Mm-hmm. So it's just, it's maddening.
My biggest beef, we've talked a lot about the RPI over the years, is that if it's transparent, and then we'll move on after this because we can talk ad nauseum about the RPI. My biggest beef with the RPI is this. On their website, it says, this is fully transparent. It's it's a math formula. You can just do it. If it's transparent, this is the one question I have. Why does it go dark for a week before you release all your stuff?
Spot on. That was my question too.
Nobody's been able to answer that.
No one
You
knows.
can say, "Oh, we want to do this. We want to do this reveal." I don't mind. Well, teams are going to throw games. That's garbage. People don't throw games to get seeds. Plus, the formula is so complicated, you couldn't figure out how to do it if you
can't
wanted
recreate
to.
it.
Yeah.
Right. If I need to do geometry, here's the formula. We can all do it.
Yeah.
Right. No one can recreate what the RPI formula is or how it does the outcome.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Maddening.
So what's next? What's next for Jeremy Hill?
Good question.
Daddy-o.
Gonna be a dad again. That's really what's next. No, my wife and I have a new business we've started, Mountain Muscle, which is going phenomenal. It's going better after 1 year than we ever thought it could be.
It's awesome.
Got a new building. We've got a house we're building.
Where is your house, real quick?
It is so where I grew up the last 20 years.
Yeah.
We bought the lot right behind that.
Awesome.
So it'll be easy move.
Yeah.
So we've got that going on, and then we've got a kid here coming in March. So hopefully it's a boy. Hopefully we're coaching again. We'll see.
That's awesome.
Yeah, good stuff.
I know you talked about that you had applied to get back into coaching. Is that something that you are actively doing, or if it happens, it happens, or what's there?
I think it's more of a happens. It happens. When Gabe stepped away, I care about the kids, right? And obviously Orem's got some really good talent this year, and I thought with what I've done in the past, we can use that same formula to go back and win. But it's I don't need it. My W-2 is a lot bigger if I don't do it. My stress level's down.
You got a lot more time at home.
I looked at that last state championship and I was like 330. And I'm like, I look so fat on TV. So now I got time, get down to 265, drop about 70 pounds. And you just have much more time to do the stuff you want to.
Oh, yeah.
Snow had an open job for a while there. I talked to them a little bit, but it would have to be the right fit, whether it's high school, collegiate. But for right now, I'm happy. Life's good. I got zero complaints. We get to go watch games on Friday night. We get to watch, kids play collegiately that I coached on Saturdays. We're planning our trips to go watch Noah and Puka play this year. So we're in a good spot. If it happens, it happens. I'm sure if this is a son in her belly over here, we'll be doing it again in the next 5-6 years. But right now, we're good.
Good. When is she due?
March 2nd.
Nice.
We'll know the gender here next week, so we're excited.
Nice. Well, we're excited. We're excited to have you here. Like you say, for as you grow up and everybody kind of does their thing, but we've always followed you at the level. People always ask me like, "Do you know Jeremy Hill?" Like, yeah, I know Jeremy Hill.
We do it.
We would follow. I know when all those games that they would put on Thursday night, and you got Dave Fox and Alema on there, and we'd dial them up at home and watch Orem High School. So we watched Puka and Cooper and Hunter and all these guys play, and it was fun. Even though I didn't really personally know them, there was this connection because we obviously knew you and we knew what you were doing, and so it was fun. It was fun to be a part of that. So
I appreciate the support. It's always been. I get the text from Benny all the time after the different games, different stuff, and he's been our uniform guy, our swag guy for a long time. So definitely part of the family.
We just carry on to Mountain Muscle now.
Yeah,
pumping that stuff
has
out.
to. We'll always have something.
But Andy's correct. I go to the BYU games and I see the Slade and the Robinson, and they played Utah State last year. And so you had a lot of your kids. There might have been 5, 6, or 7 of them that were out on the field after the game as well.
I think I've got that picture I posted. There's like 8 of them between Utah State, BYU. Yeah, we've got 3 or 4 at Utah State. We had one just transferred to Weber, but we've got still like 4 or 5 at BYU. So fun stuff.
Yeah. So it's been a pleasure to have you here. One other side note, there's a Hill connection here, is that obviously Jeremy won 3 state championships in football. This would be Coach Hill, who was a coaching legend here. He won 3 straight in basketball and 3 straight in baseball. I don't think there's another family anywhere in the state of Utah that has done that.
Love it. Love it. We just
so there you go, right there.
Yeah, I love it.
Gunnison connections there. So it's cool for you to be a part of that and be related to you and know what you're doing. So it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here. We want to do this for a long time, and we knew you had all kinds of stories and things to share.
Good or bad ones, I got them.
One thing that we talk about, Andy and I have tried to this year. We spoke with, you're the 3rd coach that we've spoken to this year, and we did a handful last year. Coaches don't get the recognition that's due to them, and a lot of times coaches aren't asking for it. But deep down, we know how much coaches put into stuff, and we know how much from our level, how much you've put into it, how much you've impacted kids. And we just want to thank you from the coaching profession and from what we do, what you've done for kids. It's been phenomenal. So
no, I appreciate that. Those who know, those that have walked the shoes, they know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Even though you've pissed people off, we know what you've done to put into it.
I was told, it was actually by Todd Peterson, because he's obviously been super successful. A lot of haters, but he said, if you're doing things right, making things happen, winning, he goes, you're going to get a lot of opposition. The more opposition you get, the more hate you get, means you're doing the right stuff. Keep doing it.
Awesome.
Next time we get some swag transferred, we need some Orem gear.
Gotcha.
You need to put something up here.
Gotcha. No,
I've got all the stuff that I've done through Orem, I don't have anything here.
I've got boxes still. I'll bring you down some.
Good. Right on, man.
Well, thank you again for bringing your beautiful wife, Janae, down. Appreciate it. It's good to meet her. And sounds like you guys are going to the rodeo tonight.
Rodeo time. Got my boots and hat in the car, so we go swap them out.
San Pete County?
Yep.
Love it. Yeah. I know they had the demolition derby last night.
Yeah, I heard it was good.
You know what's interesting? Gunnison was playing home football game last night, and the stands were empty, and most of that is because of the derby. So only in small town Utah does that. Normally Friday night lights, dude, it doesn't matter. It was slim pickings last night.
Yeah.
I love it.
If people have to pick, they're going to the derby.
Going to the derby.
Yeah.
So great.
Well, thank you, Jeremy.
I appreciate it.
What a great podcast. It's fun when these go. They kind of just take a life of their own, and it's so fun to see what makes people into who they are. Again, sometimes most people just see the superficial level, and they only see what they read online, especially with social media, and they're like, I don't know about this. Our job is to peel that onion back and let people know, okay, this is really why people do what they do. And then you can make your judgments from there. And not everybody's going to like everybody. We get that. But what we want to do is share, all right, here's the story. You want to know what's going on? Let's bring the guys on. So 2 weeks ago, we had the head coach from San Juan. He's actually going for a three-peat this year.
Oh, nice.
So he would join your ranks. This last week, we had the head coach from Beaver. He's won 2 in a row before. They're the favorite in 1A this year. Fantastic storied program down there. They've been in the state championship 7 of the last 8 years. So a lot of these small schools, they've got some programs, and we talked a little bit about some of this thing that, hey, when you win, sometimes
people don't like you.
Yeah, and as he said,
they find reasons to not like you.
He said that, they play the villain in many people's stories, and it's true because they found a way. They show up and they punch you in the mouth, and they're not going to be they're unapologetic, and they're like, this is Beaver football, right? You don't like it? It's game on. And Orem High School, that was the same thing with you. And so it's fun to see that there's actually a process. You want to win. You want to be a good program. You want to win state championships. Here's the path. It's just most people aren't willing to do what it takes to do that. So it's been fun to hear the backstory of everything that happened there.
It's funny you say that too. Going back to Timpview when I first started, we hate Timpview, we hate Lou Wong, we hate Whittingham, we hate Van Orden, we hate Timpview. I was going, well, let me look at what they're doing. What is the pattern? I don't hate the winner, right, but I want to look at what they're doing, and I can improve upon it and do better. And so it's interesting you say that, because that's exactly what the coaches are like. What are you talking about? We hate. I go, no, I don't. They're the winner. Let's look at what they're doing, make it better, and then we'll go on and win and beat them, take their spot. Yeah. So it's interesting how you view stuff.
Yeah, very fascinating. Well, thanks again for joining the Fourth Row. I think you are the first one who's not actually a part of our 2A community, but
he's a Hill.
By virtue of
adopt him in.
having the Hill family here and having 100% San Pete blood in you, you're always welcome on the podcast.
Love the nepotism.
Yeah. We're going to make it happen. Well, as we close again, we'd like to thank you and your wife for coming down tonight. So for Coach Benny Hill, I'm Andy Hill, and for the 3-time state championship coach of Orem High School, Jeremy Hill, we're out.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for spending your time with the Fourth Row. For more information, visit our website at fourthrowmedia.com or check us out on any of our social media channels.